Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. As always, I like to read the intentions for why I started this podcast back in 2020. Number one, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from this community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing to victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural appropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and light-washing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor each and every body that has come through this community, both named and unnamed. And number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, to process their own emotions, to get somatic therapy, cult-specific therapy, and other support as needed, to draw your own conclusions, and to be critical thinkers rather than to just blindly follow anyone. Please remember that your story matters, and please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. So, folks, I want to welcome you back to another episode. I'm just doing a quick update. I don't have any guests today. The series called Breath of Fire came out on HBO and is an original docu-series special on HBO Max. It's available as of 3 weeks ago. So there's been 3 episodes that has aired, and many of us have seen it. And yet I just have a few updates because it seems that there may be some damage control letters going out from KRI. I just thought I'd just give a few updates. I've watched the series and I am really enjoying it. I think that they did a great job in terms of showing kind of the hybrid predatory culture that grows from the original in Guru Jagat. I think a lot of us that grew up, I'm born and raised in 3HO and some of the original 70s, 80s, and 90s clans, so to speak, don't even know who she is, and kind of watching and witnessing the hybrid abuse that continues to grow when silence culture and shame culture wins, right? Many of us leave 3HO and seek Dharma, but there's no vocal movement against it per se. And so it just kind of continues to grow in all of the kind of tentacle ways. So that was pretty shocking. Even myself having years in 2014, 15, 16, that I was teaching Kundalini Yoga kind of as an active part of my own disturbing, detangling, and trying to understand the trauma that was living in my body without understanding that what I had grown up in was a cult. I was teaching Kundalini Yoga, and I remember hearing about Guru Jagat when I was out in New York, and there was kind of all this fanfare, and I just remember thinking, like, who the hell is she, you know? Who is she? So watching that makes me laugh, even having built an online brand as a Kundalini Yoga teacher to an extent. until my inner guidance was like, nope, you can't keep going with this. It's just such an interesting thing to watch how Instagram influencer culture meets spiritual predator abuse, and her attempting to mimic the much more complex history of 3HO Kundalini Yoga, as many of us know, than just the tale of Guru Jagat. I also feel like they've done the best they could to give some history, and they're weaving back and forth, but I'm left with the feeling, like it's hard to see your life summed up in a 4-episode HBO Max film. And of course it's not, your life isn't, but it kind of feels like it's on display in that capacity. So I have been enjoying it. This last episode, number 3, even just hearing Mahani's story and the courage that it takes to come out and share, and also knowing that there's so many more of us out here that have stories that have not been shared, that have been silenced, people that can corroborate and correct stories that are being told on the HBO documentary, fill in the gaps, so to speak. There's so many of you listening that know these stories so intimately and know the details of abuse so intimately, and yet they're hidden in the chambers of your own remembrance. So to me, that's a part of what's heavy listening and watching it, is just realizing that it like barely scratches the surface of all of your stories and your lives and the interwoven web that has made up the legacy of our lives. And the bound hurts and the bound terror and the bound love, all mixed up in there. Along with the Breath of Fire series, there is an unofficial companion podcast that I want to make sure everyone knows about, called the Temple of Steel. And this is put out by Philip DeSlip and Stacy Stukin. And I highly recommend that you listen to this wherever you are in the world, even if you can't watch the HBO special yet. It's fantastic. They really go into a lot more detail of their study and research and what made it into the documentary and what didn't, and kind of helps to round it out so you're not left feeling so jagged, because the series puts in so much information. And of course it's incomplete. There's no way that there's going to ever be enough in such a small episode series. And I think that the series is doing a great job at being able to weave back and forth how something present day, living right now, is continuing, goes back to a much deeper predatory history that so many of us are yet to fully talk about in a public sphere. So what I want to talk about today on the episode specifically is the KRI damage control going on. I want to read this letter from KRI because essentially the CEO of KRI sent out damage control to all the yoga teachers in all of the centers worldwide, and whoever disseminates information to the telephone tree of Aquarian teachers and yoga centers and ashrams. Now, the CEO of KRI right now, if you didn't know, is Jagat Guru Singh, okay? And this is important to know. Jagat Guru Singh Khalsa, CEO for KRI. So Jagat Guru is my generation. He married Guru Devkar, who was my best friend growing up in Phoenix. And they were in India together as high schoolers and teenagers, and then married, and then ended up working and running that school, Midi Pity, and many stories, a lot of abuse stories that got submitted include Jagat Guru's abuse for people that went to Midi Pity Academy. But he, remember, was a kid that grew up in the system and then has grown on to now become the CEO. Since the board flipped and everything is back to kind of pro YB, there's stopped kind of being a shift in the branding culture, and it's kind of back to what it used to be in terms of the original 3HO logos. YB is centered in everything quite again since the board vote takeover. I don't know details, folks. I try not to pay too much attention, but this came to my attention, and so I just had to read it. If you have things you want me to bring to people's attention, you are welcome to email and send me it out, because I'm sure there are so many of you that are way more connected to some of the inside scoop of damage control and inner workings that perhaps the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community would like to hear, and I'd be happy to broadcast on your behalf or on an anonymous behalf. All right. This is the letter that goes out to all the Kundalini Yoga people. Okay. Sat Nam, dear Kundalini Yoga family. We are reaching out to our trainers and national associations as part of this global community with some important information related to recent media programming about Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. To the extent this results in a conversation around this topic, we want to take this important opportunity to engage with you and offer some thoughts and guidance on addressing communications about these issues. The portrayal of Kundalini, now there are bullet points, and I'm going to read the bullet points. This is they're basically pinpointing, hey, this HBO special is out. At the top of the email, it says, if any media or journalist reaches out to you for a statement, we ask that you please kindly refer them to Satwant Singh, SSSC Corp., who is the best person to answer these questions and give an official statement. So if you want to send an official statement about how you feel about their damage control to Satwant Singh, I highly encourage you to do that. All right, let's go ahead and read their bullet points of their damage control because this HBO special is out and it is going to send some ripple effects through the Kundalini Yoga community. The portrayal of Kundalini Yoga in recent productions is clearly contrary to our experiences and the lived experiences of thousands of people around the world who practice this healing technology every day. There are over 200 scientific studies on Kundalini Yoga by world-respected and gold standard research facilities like Harvard University and UCLA and even top universities in India. These studies conclude that Kundalini Yoga is extremely impactful with diseases like Alzheimer's, insomnia, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression, and for management of stress. There are more and more studies being performed, and people around the world are seeing the value of adding Kundalini Yoga to any health-conscious daily regimen. There are thousands more studies on yoga and meditation and breathwork in general that confirm the experience of millions of people worldwide and the impact, legitimacy, and relevance of this amazing science. Number 2, the lineage of these teachings is clear and intact. There are thousands of teachers worldwide sharing the science, many of them in underprivileged areas of the world, in prisons and hospitals, where people are terminally ill, in active war zones where horrendous and immediate trauma are prevalent, all with incredible stories of hope and healing brought about through the value of the teachings of Kundalini Yoga. The benefits of this practice are not limited along racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, or geographic lines. There are thousands of teachers teaching Kundalini Yoga as professionals in the wellness arena around the world, in almost every single country, to help serve individuals and entire communities. Their impact on society is monumental, and they thrive in the graceful profession of teaching Kundalini Yoga. We have an Office of Ethics and Professional Standards. It's called EPS. That includes a commission with representatives from all parts of the globe. They help to ensure our teachers apply the highest standards of our code of ethics and are a body known to all to bring any related grievance to the support and action. And finally, for those who have reported harmful experiences in the Sikh Dharma Kundalini Yoga community, our worldwide organization has had a robust response to these issues that has accepted reports of harm without challenge and worked to address them, including through a compassionate reconciliation program, restorative justice work, free counseling support, and an independent reparations program. This is an opportunity to refine and deepen our understandings of how we share and deliver these teachings in the current global atmosphere and sensationalized media environment. We remain committed to the ongoing work to present ourselves with a global identity, united under the umbrella of the teachings of Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan, and to stand out as a clear, conscious, and compassionate representation of our collective values. We welcome the chance to continue this dialogue in our upcoming regional meeting. So please do take time to register and attend. Please also feel free to reach out to me personally at any time if I can offer any support to you in this process. If any media or journalist reaches out to you for a statement, we ask that you please kindly refer them to Satwant Singh at satwant@ssscorp.org. who is the best person to answer their questions and can give an official statement. Sat Nam, Jagat Guru Singh, the CEO for KRI. So there's just so much in there talking about the ethical codes, the EPS as the ethics and professional standards. And if anyone, again, wants to email Satwant Singh, let them know how we felt about the Compassionate Reconciliation Program or the restorative justice work or the free counseling support that so many people didn't even know existed. Or how about the Independent Reparations Program? Maybe they want to hear from us about that. The robust response, as he says. Or maybe he needs to be reminded that in episode 3, a young child who was born into our community named Mahani was raped by the time she turned 18, and she shares her testimony in this series. And she was our sister. She is our sister. And she was groomed into this position at the same age group as he. Maybe he hasn't listened to that story yet. So how does one hold the uncomfortable lineage of these teachings that are clear and intact as predatory, but not acknowledged? Because people are busy trying to represent themselves in a global identity, forgetting the fact that everything that's being exposed in this HBO series happened, is continuing to happen, is absolutely alive and well in the Kundalini Yoga tradition. Don't believe the hype out here if people are trying to tell you that that was in the past and only Yogi Bhajan and yada yada. But in this case, I think Jagat Guru forgot the memo. I think he didn't listen to Mahani's story yet. I don't think he's listened to any of our stories yet. So I don't know about you, but I was pretty disturbed by that email. I'd heard from another second gen who had her own words to say and sent it to her community saying, you have no right. I'll just give you a little summation of her response. Don't you tell me how to respond if a media or journalist comes and asks me about the predatory abuse of the Kundalini Yoga community. She got to express herself, and it's so important that those of us that are out here, that are a part of yoga centers, that you don't let this new narrative be formed that whitewashes and lightwashes sadistic, predatory abuse at the hands of Yogi Bhajan that groomed our children from the time they were born, our girls, and infused really, really what Stacy Stukin talks about in the Temple of Steel as both structure and culture. In both structure and culture, what does it mean when abuse is systemic? It's in both the structure of it and in the culture of it. And so it means that our very identities get bred in the predatory distortion. So it's structure, system, and culture. It's very, very deeply tough to untangle because both love and abuse is commingled in the same place. Your identity has been formed. I mean, it was so painful to witness Mahani's testimony. And I know it's like not even an eighth of her story, like, geez. So I feel about all my sisters out here, like, you may never be able to tell your story. It might never be safe enough, but if it ever is and you're ready to share it, I'm here. Because I get metallic in my mouth thinking about this stuff. I get so angry. If I hadn't done some healthy sexual exploration in my life, in my intentional personal healing and recovery years, I wouldn't know that people are sadistic and masochistic because they want to be, and there's like sexual consent for that kind of stuff. What Yogi Bhajan did was absolutely sadist behavior. And there is so much sadist behavior infused into the Kundalini yoga lifestyle. And I don't care what you say when you come up with all these things about the technology and even the documentation. Just listen to the history. Listen to Stacy Stukin and Philip Deslip, and as they really break apart the mythology that got woven as consciousness into the marinade of our identity from the time we're born. And predatory abuse that's normalized isn't okay. And just because it's normalized doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it better. It makes me want to blast this stuff from the rooftops and encourage every one of us to mobilize and to make sure that in our little inner spheres, we're handing someone the Under the Yoga Mat book. Every time you hear somebody say, you know, they're a Kundalini yoga teacher, like, have you read Under the Yoga Mat yet? You know, like, you know, have you not listened to one of the stories of the kids born and raised in it? You know? Do you not understand how deeply, deeply psychologically twisted and distorted this structure and system is? Yeah. Anyway, I can't encourage us all enough to be that living advocate, because walking away and knowing it for your own self and waking up to it is wonderful. It's good. But as you see in the Guru Jagat story on the HBO special, man, people take these things and run. And that's what I see people doing with Kundalini Yoga right now. They're just coming up with their own narratives. We recorded some episodes for the Spanish channel. And I mean, it's just incredible, some of the stories that are being woven as a rebrand for Kundalini Yoga teachers right now. One teacher is talking about his story of how he was raped as a young person, and now he's being able to be a Kundalini Yoga teacher and yada, yada. So it's like they're using predatory abuse as a way to bypass their own emotions and be able to elevate Kundalini Yoga as if it's some, anyway, it's just, this stuff, makes me growl. So yeah, that's what I have to say here. Listen to the Temple of Steel. Watch the HBO special. Love and encouragement to all second gen who showed up, even the first gen, every one of you who showed up to tell the tale and to tell your story in the HBO special. And just know that there's so many more of us that have more to share. And whether our stories are ever told is another story, but know that your story matters, you know, and it's not complete just because we're seeing it on the screen. But it does give us a lens into just how sick and twisted it really is and really was, even if there are also some great things about it, right? And it's like, compared to what? There's just all sorts of stuff to detangle when it comes to culty programming. But I want to remind you that you're not alone. We're not alone in this. There are so many of us out here that have been born and raised in high demand and high controlled groups. I myself am actively in cult support group for born and raised in child survivors of cults. It's been helpful beyond measure for this particular stage of my healing and recovery journey. And of course, we all need different things at different stages of our recovery. I just can't encourage it enough. Understanding what we actually endured collectively, institutionally, systemically, culturally, structurally, that formed our identity, that was actually really rooted in some evil, sadistic shit. And it continues to go on in the name of consciousness and awareness. And so that's what this email highlights to me. I have a lot of empathy for Jagat Guru, because I have a feeling he's never listened to Mahani's story, or Siri's story, or, you know, all the other stories. But Satwan Singh, like Satwan at SSS Corp. Anyway, listen to the Temple of Steel. I do want to encourage you to watch the HBO special. I want to encourage you to get some cult support therapy. I have people that reach out to me, and some of y'all don't even know what it is. You know, like, there's cult specific therapy. Yes. How long you've been out doesn't necessarily help your brain repair, you know, understanding the ways that our identities get kind of frozen and distorted in time. There's a lot of good support out here. Listen to The Temple of Steel by Philip DeSlip and Stacy Stukin. I found that to be fantastic, a good way to integrate each episode. And I even go back and listen to it again a couple of times. I can't encourage you enough to get the Under the Yoga Mat book, The Dark History of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. It's a fantastic starter. You know, if anybody needs to peek their way in, I think every single yoga association and yoga class and yoga training needs to have this be a part of the mandatory reading, and there needs to be some discussion on it. Because if one's going to continue to teach Kundalini Yoga, at least be honest about the level of sadism and dark history that exists and continues to permeate the Kundalini Yoga community, to pretend that it does not, and to go on and rebrand yourself as a typical cult does, is not surprising. It's definitely what I would anticipate 3HO to do. And I have no interest in fighting them doing it. Like, that's what cults do. It's going to continue to hybrid and get more and more distorted, and more people are going to get hurt in 10 years from now and 20 years from now. So if you speak Spanish, and you can add to the Spanish language translation, if you speak any language out here, and you can support the language translations of getting this content and material translated and into more people's hands, because the European community is going on blind, and each one of us needs to be an each one, teach one. Hey, did you know Kundalini Yoga is actually rooted in some really sadistic stuff? You know, like, did you read Under the Yoga Mat? My sisters were groomed. Yeah, and it didn't stop with them, right? So, you know, we need to have ways to insert and be everyday living advocates, as far as I'm concerned, because your silence means that it gets to be able to hybrid itself into another Guru Jugget of the world that wants to become an Instagram boss babe. And I just couldn't even believe some of these outfits. Like, man, half my life I've been dealing with sexual shame, and she's up there like wearing this like sexy bra while she's teaching and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, more power to you. You know, I've worked so hard to be able to do that. But it made me laugh simultaneously, right? Because it just shows how that's what cult leaders can do. They can take one aspect of something and then bastardize it, and then make an entire new teaching around one little aspect of a section of your false life, you know, your false cult identity. And this is how they hybrid and grow like super predators. So anyway, it's never ending. I think we all have a personal responsibility out here to stop rape culture, to stop allowing spiritual abuse by staying silent and letting people know that Under the Yoga Mat exists. Read it. I did the foreword, and it's pretty good if I do say so myself. And there are lots of stories from the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast that have been transcribed. And it's a fantastic lens into both the beauty of 3HO, like what drew people in, the food, the culture, the community, the music, the consciousness, and then also how the abuse was always in plain sight, and that's what cult leaders do, you know? So anyways, I can't encourage it enough. And I think all of us can have a testimony of somebody saying, I'm doing Kundalini Yoga, or somebody's teaching, and you can be like, yo, did you know about Under the Yoga Mat? Did you know my sisters were groomed in this? It's not good. I know people are going to continue to teach, and that's their own choice. But again, I can't encourage you enough to at least let yourself know what happened and teach from that place where you're willing to go into that complex distortion and let yoga be how you illuminate what makes no sense. How do you make sense of something that makes no sense? Not by bypassing it and pretending it didn't happen, or that all was meant to be, but to actually feel the discomfort of it and to see how we move through it collectively in holding each other's grief. So that's my encouragement to all you teachers out there teaching, and for anybody who knows somebody who's still teaching. Spread the word. Tell them to watch the HBO special. Thank you, our second gen, all of the people that spoke up on the series. And I really do wish they would have gotten more second gen perspectives. And I think that the docuseries people could have done that, but it's a lot to put into just a handful of episodes. So as we know, the Hollywood fanfare gets the focus, and I think on one level is pretty important because this is how it's currently spreading itself. It's using these kind of love and light spiritual distortions to just carry on and keep teaching. And so I'm really happy that it's exposing people like Hari Jiwan, who like just started another yoga center in, I don't know, Hollywood or something, called like Gobinde Center or something. I mean, it's just sick. I can't even get over it. Be sure to tune in to my other podcast called Uncomfortable Conversations on predatory patterns in business, community, and culture. You can tune into 3HO podcast as well as that one on my new platform called Conversations You Can Feel. And you can join in the conversation. You can post notes on this episode and share with us your response to the HBO special so far. Well, that's it. Tune into gurunishan.com for following me more specifically for the personal works that I'm putting out. And I appreciate all of you. This concludes another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. If you'd like to contribute to this podcast, you can make a one-time or monthly donation at my conversations. Please become a member, support this work, help me grow, and help me continue to share stories like this. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send me an email at gn@gurunishan.com, and you can subscribe and follow and support my provocative truth-telling work at gurunishan.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.